The clock in Thornwick Manor struck 10, and Lionel knew she had 14 hours left before she became Lord Corvus's fourth wife, and probably his fourth victim. That night, believing she had one desperate plan to save herself, she would offer everything she owned to a stranger in the shadows, never imagining she was bargaining with the most powerful alpha king in 3 territories. The man who would change her from a merchant's pawn into a queen. The decision to flee had not been born of courage. It had been born of pure desperation. Hello friends. Before we journey deeper into Lionel's story, I invite you to subscribe and share in the comments where you're listening from. Your presence here matters. Now, let's continue. Lionel stared at herself in the mirror of her chambers, her fingers trembling as she fastened the last pin into her chestnut hair, which fell in waves over her shoulders. The reflection staring back did not seem like her own. That woman with red, swollen eyes, skin too pale from sleepless nights, lips pressed into a thin line of determination, that was not Lady Lionel Thornwick, the obedient daughter of Lord Henrik of Thornwick. She was a desperate stranger preparing to do something unthinkable. In 14 hours, I will belong to Lord Corvus. The thought struck as it always did, a brutal blow that stole the air from her lungs. 14 hours. Less than a day until her father would hand her over like prized livestock to a man old enough to be her grandfather. A man whose skeletal hands had touched her face during the betrothal dinner as if he already owned the right to touch whatever he pleased. The way his pale, cold eyes had traveled over her body with calculated possession had made her stomach churn violently. She had excused herself and vomited in the corridor afterward. You will survive this, she had thought that night, locked inside her chambers while her father celebrated the alliance downstairs. But surviving was not living. And Lionel refused to merely survive. The weight of her decision pressed against her ribs like iron bands. Lionel turned from the mirror and moved to the window, looking out over the darkened grounds of Thornwick Manor. Beyond those walls lay the lower district, the night market, and somewhere in those shadows, her only hope. She had no lover waiting to rescue her, no romantic escape planned. What she had was gold, jewels, and a desperate plan that would either save her or destroy her completely. The velvet pouch rested heavy against her waist beneath the dark traveling cloak, hidden from view. She touched it through the fabric, feeling the hard shapes of her mother's jewelry, every gold coin she had managed to hide over the years. It was everything she owned in the world, her entire accumulated wealth since childhood. And I will give it all to whoever will take it. Every coin, every jewel, to any man desperate enough to marry me tonight. The plan was simple in its audacity: find a stranger, offer him a fortune, complete a legal marriage before dawn. The old marriage laws were clear: a prior binding contract voided all others, including arrangements made by fathers. If she could return to Thornwick Manor as a married woman, the contract with Lord Corvus would be worthless. It was mad. It was dangerous. It was her only chance. Soft footsteps in the corridor made her turn from the window. Her mother, Elena Thornwick, slipped through the door, closing it quietly behind her. Even in the dim candlelight, Lionel could see the tears on her mother's face. "Mama, I know what you're planning." Elena crossed the room quickly, pressing something into Lionel's hands. Another small pouch, heavier than expected. "Take these too. My grandmother's rubies. They are worth more than everything else combined." Lionel's throat tightened. "You'll be implicated if father finds out you helped me." "Let him find out." Elena's voice was fierce, though tears continued to fall. "I was married for alliance too, Lionel. Handed over at 17 to a man I'd met twice. I learned to endure it, to make peace with a loveless match. But I won't let that be your fate. Not when there's still time to choose differently. He'll be furious. He sold you to clear his gambling debts." Elena's hands trembled as she helped Lionel secure the additional pouch. "Corvus wanted control of our eastern trade routes. Your father gave you away like property to save himself from House Greymont's collectors. You owe him nothing, my darling. Nothing." The word struck like a physical blow. Lionel had suspected her father's motives were financial, but hearing it confirmed that she was literally payment for his mistakes, ignited something hot and fierce in her chest. "The guards at the East Tower change shifts at 11, Elena whispered, glancing toward the door. "You'll have 15 minutes to reach the servants' corridor and access the old tunnels. Do you remember the way?" Lionel nodded. Those narrow, dusty passages she had explored as a child during adventures her governess would have deemed improper for a young lady. She had played explorer in those tunnels, pretending to escape imaginary dragons. Now she would use them to escape a real monster, one wearing the face of respectability and noble title. After you're through the tunnels, head for the lower district. Elena's instructions came quickly, urgently. The night market will be crowded enough to hide you. Find someone who looks desperate, someone who needs gold more than questions. Offer enough that he can't refuse. And if no one agrees, then you run. Take the jewels and run as far as they'll carry you. Elena pulled her daughter into a fierce embrace. But you don't come back here. Promise me, Lionel. Whatever happens, you don't let Corvus claim you. Lionel buried her face in her mother's shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender and home. I promise. When they pulled apart, Elena wiped her eyes and straightened her spine, becoming once again the composed lady of the manor. I'll make sure your father is occupied with his guests until midnight. That should give you enough time. Thank you, Mama. For everything. Be brave, my darling. And be smart. Elena moved to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. May you find what you're looking for in the darkness. May it be better than what you're leaving behind. Then she was gone, and Lionel was alone with her fear and determination. The clock struck 10:30. 13.5 hours remaining. Lionel pulled the dark cloak tighter around herself, adjusting the hood until only her face showed. The two pouches of wealth bumped against her thighs as she moved, one filled with her own savings, the other with her mother's sacrifice. Together, they represented freedom. Or at least the chance to buy it. She reviewed the plan once more, through the servants' corridor during the guard change, down into the tunnels, emerge near the outer stables, make her way to the lower district and the night market. Find a man who looked desperate enough, trustworthy enough. Make her offer. Complete the marriage before dawn with whatever drunk priest would perform the ceremony. Return home with the certificate that would void her father's contract. Simple. Terrifyingly simple. What could possibly go wrong? Everything, the small voice of doubt whispered. Everything could go wrong. But staying was certain doom. At least running offered the chance of survival. The clock in the hallway began to chime 11. Time to move. Lionel extinguished the candles in her chamber, plunging the room into darkness. She waited by the door, counting the chimes, steadying her breathing. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands had stopped shaking. Fear and determination had crystallized into cold resolve. On the 11th chime, she opened her door and stepped into the corridor. There was no turning back now. The servants' corridor swallowed Lionel whole, its darkness absolute and suffocating. She pressed one hand against the cold stone wall, using it as a guide while her other hand clutched the pouches beneath her cloak. Each footstep echoed too loudly in the narrow space, and she winced with every sound, certain it would bring guards running. The passage smelled of dust and neglect, thick with cobwebs that brushed against her face like phantom fingers. Lionel forced herself forward, remembering the layout from childhood explorations. 20 paces straight, then a sharp left turn. Another 30 paces to the concealed door that led down into the tunnels proper. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. The weight of what she was doing pressed down on her shoulders with every step. She was abandoning her home, her family name, everything she had ever known. Running into the night like a common criminal. No. Not a criminal. A survivor. Voices drifted from somewhere above, guards making their rounds. Lionel froze, her spine pressed flat against the wall, hardly daring to breathe. The voices grew louder, discussing something about patrol routes and the wedding preparations for tomorrow. Tomorrow, when there would be no bride to marry. The voices faded. Lionel released the breath she'd been holding and continued moving. The concealed door appeared as a slightly darker rectangle in the blackness. Her fingers found the latch, the same one she'd discovered at age 9 while playing hide-and-seek with the stable master's son. It gave a soft click, and the door swung inward, revealing stone steps descending into deeper darkness. The tunnels. Lionel gathered her skirts and began the descent, one careful step at a time. The air grew colder, damper. Water dripped somewhere in the distance, a rhythmic plinking that echoed off ancient stone. These passages had been built centuries ago, escape routes for the original lords of Thornwick during times of siege. Now they would serve their purpose once more. At the bottom, the tunnel stretched in both directions. Lionel turned right, toward the outer grounds. The path was narrow, forcing her to move sideways in places where the walls pressed close. Her cloak snagged on rough stone, and she had to stop and carefully free it, her fingers clumsy with fear and adrenaline. How much time had passed? 5 minutes? 10? She had no way to know in this timeless darkness. The tunnel began to slope upward. Fresh air touched her face, carrying the scent of hay and horses. Almost there. The exit near the old stables was close. A sound froze her mid-step, footsteps, but not behind her. Ahead. Someone was coming through the tunnel from the opposite direction. Panic seized her throat. Had her father discovered her absence? Had he sent guards through the tunnels to cut off her escape? The footsteps grew closer. Lionel pressed herself into a shallow alcove, making herself as small as possible, pulling her dark cloak tight. In the blackness, perhaps she would pass for nothing more than a shadow. A figure emerged from the darkness, just a servant girl carrying a basket, humming softly to herself. She passed within inches of Lionel's hiding spot, oblivious, and continued down the tunnel toward the manor. Lionel waited until the humming faded completely before emerging. Her legs trembled beneath her, but she forced them to move. Up the sloping passage, toward freedom. The exit appeared as a sliver of moonlight. Lionel pushed through the wooden door disguised as part of the stable wall and stumbled into the night air. She gulped it down greedily, her hands braced on her knees, willing her racing heart to slow. She had made it out. The stable loomed dark and quiet beside her. Beyond it, the outer wall of the manor grounds. And beyond that, the merchant district and her destination. Lionel straightened, adjusted her hood, and moved into the shadows along the wall. She knew where the guards would be posted, the main gate, the south tower. But there was a section of wall near the rose garden where the stones had crumbled slightly over the years, creating natural footholds. She'd climbed it as a child on a dare. Tonight, she would climb it again. The roses were in bloom, their perfume almost overwhelming in the night air. Lionel found the damaged section of wall and began to climb, her fingers finding familiar holds. The stone was rough against her palms, and her arms burned with the effort, but desperation gave her strength. Up, up, until she reached the top. She paused there, straddling the wall, looking back at Thornwick Manor one final time. Candlelight glowed in windows. Music and laughter drifted from the great hall where her father entertained guests, celebrating a wedding that would never happen. Goodbye, she thought. Goodbye to all of it. Then she swung her legs over and dropped down the other side. The landing jarred her knees, but she rolled with the impact as she'd seen the stable boys do countless times. When she stood, she was outside the manor grounds, truly free for the first time in her life. The merchant district lay ahead, its buildings dark except for a few taverns still serving late-night patrons. Lionel moved quickly through the streets, keeping to the shadows, her hood pulled low. Every drunk stumbling from a tavern, every cat yowling in an alley, made her flinch. She passed the silversmith shop where her mother bought jewelry, the bookbinder where she'd spent countless afternoons, the bakery that made her favorite honey cakes. All familiar landmarks that now felt distant, belonging to a life she was leaving behind. The lower district began where the merchant quarter ended, a gradual transition marked by rougher streets, buildings in disrepair, and a different quality to the darkness. Here, the shadows held real danger. Lionel's heart quickened as she entered this unfamiliar territory. A group of men lounged outside a tavern, their voices loud and rough. She crossed to the other side of the street, walking faster, not meeting their eyes. "Hey, pretty lady," one called out. "Need some company?" She ignored them, clutching the pouches beneath her cloak. The men laughed but didn't follow. The night market sprawled before her like a living thing, all torchlight and movement and noise. Lionel had never been here after dark. Proper ladies didn't frequent such places. But desperation stripped away propriety, leaving only raw need. The market consisted of dozens of stalls and temporary structures, all lit by oil lamps and cooking fires. Merchants called out their wares, spices from distant lands, weapons that gleamed in the firelight, bolt after bolt of fabric in every color imaginable. The smell of roasting meat mixed with incense, leather, and unwashed bodies. People moved through the aisles between stalls, traders completing final deals, laborers spending their day's wages, men and women whose purposes Lina could only guess at. She saw a woman with painted lips negotiating with a merchant over silk. Two men exchanged a package in shadows, glancing around nervously. A group of sailors sang drunkenly, arms linked, stumbling through the crowd. This was a different world, one that operated by rules she didn't understand. Lina moved through the market, studying faces. She needed someone desperate but not dangerous. Someone who needed gold enough to marry a stranger without asking questions. Someone she could trust to honor the bargain and disappear afterward. A man collapsed near a beer cart, unconscious in a puddle of his own making. No, too drunk. A scarred mercenary haggled over the price of daggers, his movements aggressive, his voice harsh. No, too dangerous. A boy who couldn't be more than 16 carried crates for a merchant, his thin arms straining. No, too young, and the marriage wouldn't be legal. A group of rough-looking traders examined stolen goods, their laughter cruel as they mocked the merchant who'd been robbed. No, too many complications. Panic began to creep in. What if she couldn't find anyone? What if her plan was foolish from the start? The night was passing, and she was running out of options. Then she saw him. At the market's edge, away from the main crowds, a man sat alone beside a dying fire. The flames cast orange light across his features, illuminating honey-blonde hair that fell past his shoulders and a face of strong, angular planes. He wore simple clothes, a worn linen shirt open at the collar, a leather vest, dark trousers tucked into travel-worn boots. But it wasn't his appearance that made her pause. It was his stillness. While chaos swirled around the market, he sat with perfect calm, watching the flames with an intensity that suggested he was seeing something far beyond the fire. There was something about him, a sense of controlled power in the relaxed line of his shoulders, a quality she couldn't name that made her wolf instincts prickle with awareness. He looked up then, as if sensing her gaze. His eyes met hers across the distance, and even in the firelight, she could see they were gold. Bright as coins, sharp as a predator's, and utterly focused on her. A shiver ran down her spine. Warning or recognition, she couldn't tell. This man was dangerous. Every instinct screamed it. But she was out of time and options, and something in his steady gaze suggested he might understand desperation when he saw it. Lina made her decision. She started walking toward the stranger by the fire, her hand tight around the velvet pouches that held her entire future. Please, she thought. Please let this work. The stranger watched her approach, his expression unreadable in the dancing firelight. The stranger didn't move as Lina approached, but his gold eyes tracked her every step with unnerving intensity. Up close, she could see him more clearly, the strong line of his jaw shadowed with stubble, the weathered quality of his skin that spoke of years spent outdoors, the powerful build of his shoulders beneath the worn shirt. He was handsome in a raw, elemental way that had nothing to do with the polished nobility she'd grown up around. And he was tall. Even seated, she could tell he would tower over her. Lina stopped a few feet from the fire, suddenly uncertain. What did one say in a situation like this? Excuse me, stranger, would you like to marry me for gold? The word seemed absurd even in her desperate mind. You've been watching the market for 20 minutes. His voice was deep, textured like whiskey and smoke, with an edge of amusement. Studying faces. Rejecting everyone you see. What are you searching for? The observation unsettled her. She hadn't realized anyone was watching her in return. I need. She swallowed, started again. I have a proposition. A business arrangement. Business. He leaned back slightly, his gaze never leaving her face. At this hour, in this place, I can imagine several kinds of business a noblewoman might be seeking. Heat flooded her cheeks. Not that kind. No. He gestured to the log beside him. Then sit, and tell me what kind. Lina hesitated. Sitting felt too intimate, too trusting. But standing while he sat put her at a disadvantage. She perched on the edge of the log, keeping distance between them, acutely aware of how alone they were at the market's edge. I need a husband. The words came out blunt, graceless. By tomorrow. By dawn, specifically. If she'd expected shock, she was disappointed. His expression remained calm, merely thoughtful. An interesting requirement. And the urgency suggests you're running from something. Or someone. Does it matter? Perhaps not. He shifted, and firelight played across his features, making his eyes gleam like actual gold. But I'm curious why a lady of quality is offering herself to strangers in the night market instead of marrying through proper channels. The proper channel is what I'm running from. Lionel clutched the pouches beneath her cloak. I'm being forced into a marriage with a man who's buried 3 wives under suspicious circumstances. My father arranged it to clear his debts. If I can produce a prior marriage contract by dawn, his arrangement becomes void. Clever. Something that might have been approval flickered in his eyes. Using the old laws against those who would use you. And what do you offer this hypothetical husband in exchange for his name and his silence? Lionel pulled out the velvet pouches, opening them to show the contents. Gold coins caught the firelight, glinting warm and rich. Jewels sparkled, sapphires deep as midnight, emeralds bright as spring, her mother's ruby ring that burned like captured fire. Enough to live comfortably for years, she said, proud that her voice stayed steady. Enough that you'd never have to work another day if you invested wisely. All I need is your name on a marriage document and your vow to appear if summoned to verify the union. After tomorrow, we part ways and never see each other again. The stranger studied the fortune in her hands with an expression she couldn't read. Most men would have shown greed, calculation, excitement. He showed none of these things. Instead, he seemed almost sad. You're offering everything you own to escape, he said quietly. Everything reduced to currency, traded for a stranger's signature. Yes. Lionel's throat tightened. Because the alternative is worse than poverty. It's death, just slower and more painful. He was silent for a long moment, his gaze moving from the jewels back to her face. What's your name? The question surprised her. Does it matter? This is a business transaction. Humor me. Lionel. She saw no reason to lie. Lionel Thornwick. Something flickered in his expression, recognition? But it was gone too quickly to be certain. Lionel, he repeated, as if tasting the syllables. And you're how old? 22. Old enough to marry without permission. The old laws were clear on that point. Old enough to make this choice. Are you? His head tilted slightly. Or are you trading one cage for another, one master for the next? Anger sparked in her chest. I'm trading nothing. This marriage is a legal fiction, a piece of paper to save my life. After tomorrow, I'll be beholden to no one. And if I refuse? The question sent ice through her veins. Then I keep searching until I find someone who won't. Even if that someone is dangerous? Cruel? Even if you're inviting a different kind of wolf into your life? I'll take that risk. Lionel lifted her chin. Because staying means certain doom. Running offers at least the chance of survival. The stranger regarded her with those unsettling gold eyes, and Lionel had the distinct impression she was being evaluated, measured against some invisible standard. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of the dying fire and the distant noise of the market. You have courage, he said finally. Desperate courage, perhaps, but courage nonetheless. Most people in your position would simply accept their fate. I'm not most people. No. His mouth curved slightly. I'm beginning to see that. He rose in one fluid motion, and Lionel's assessment was correct. He was tall, at least 6.5 feet, maybe more. He moved with a predator's grace that made her wolf instincts scream warning signals she didn't fully understand. She stood as well, refusing to be at a disadvantage, though she barely reached his shoulder. I accept your offer, he said simply. Relief crashed through her so powerfully she nearly stumbled. You do. I do. Your proposal is straightforward, your need genuine, and your payment generous. He glanced at the jewels still in her hands. Though you should put those away before someone less honorable than I decides to take them by force. Lionel hastily tucked the pouches back beneath her cloak. Her hands trembled with relief and residual fear. Thank you. Thank you, I. Don't thank me yet. He stepped closer, and she caught his scent, pine and leather and something wild she couldn't name. We need to find a priest willing to perform the ceremony at this hour. And we need to move quickly. How much time do you have? Lionel tried to calculate. She'd left the manor around 11. The journey here had taken perhaps 30 minutes. Maybe 10 hours until dawn. Then we should go. He offered his hand. Shall we seal the bargain? She looked at his extended hand, calloused and strong, and hesitated for only a heartbeat before clasping it. The moment their skin touched, everything changed. An electric shock of recognition jolted through her, so powerful she gasped aloud. It felt like lightning and honey, like coming home and falling off a cliff simultaneously. Her wolf surged to the surface, whining and pawing at something she didn't understand, something that felt like mine and safe and right all tangled together. Lionel tried to pull back, but his fingers tightened gently around hers. Not trapping, but steadying, as if he'd felt it too. What? She couldn't finish the question. What was that? His gold eyes had brightened, taking on an almost luminescent quality in the firelight. For a moment, she could have sworn they flickered to a different shade entirely. Wolf amber, the color of an alpha's eyes when emotion ran high. But when she blinked, they were gold again. Normal. Almost. Just a bargain, little wolf, he said, his voice rougher than before. Just a bargain. The endearment unsettled her. Why did he call her that? How did he know she carried wolf blood? But before she could ask, he released her hand and began walking toward the market center. Come. I know where we can find a priest at this hour. Lionel followed, her hand still tingling where he'd touched it, her wolf still agitated in a way she'd never experienced before. The stranger moved through the market with confidence, as if he knew every twist and turn, every shortcut. People seemed to unconsciously move out of his way, parting like water around a stone. Who was this man? A traveler, by his clothes. But travelers didn't usually carry themselves with such authority, didn't inspire automatic deference from crowds. You never told me your name, she called after him. He glanced back, and for a moment, she could have sworn amusement danced in those gold eyes. You never asked. I'm asking now. Rain. He turned down a narrow alley between stalls. My name is Rain. Just Rain. For now, just Rain. The answer was deliberately evasive, and Lionel knew it. But what choice did she have? She'd already committed to this path. Already placed her trust, and her future, in the hands of a mysterious stranger who made her wolf instinct scream contradictory warnings. Dangerous, her instinct said. Powerful. Not what he seems. But also, safe. Mate. Ours. That last thought was so absurd she pushed it away immediately. Mate bonds were rare, the stuff of legend and romantic tales. The chances of stumbling across one's fated mate in a desperate midnight market were astronomical. No. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. The strange sensation when they touched was probably just nerves, or exhaustion, or the general surrealism of her entire situation. Rain led her out of the market and into the temple district, where ancient buildings devoted to various deities stood in quiet dignity. He seemed to know exactly where he was going, moving with purpose through streets Lionel had never walked. How do you know this city so well? She asked. You said you travel. I've been here before. His tone suggested the subject was closed. They stopped before a small stone chapel, its architecture old enough to predate most of the buildings around it. A single light burned in a window. St. Moraine's, Rain said. Father Aldrich officiates late-night ceremonies for those with urgent need. He asks few questions if the payment is sufficient. How do you know that? Instead of answering, Rain climbed the steps and knocked on the heavy wooden door. After a moment, it opened to reveal an elderly priest in rumpled robes, smelling faintly of communion wine. Yes. Father Aldrich squinted at them. Do you know what hour it is? Rain produced a gold coin, from where, Lionel couldn't tell, since she hadn't paid him yet, and placed it in the priest's palm. The hour when urgent marriages are performed. We need your services, Father. The priest examined the coin, then looked at Lionel and Rain with rheumy but knowing eyes. Running from something, are you? Toward something, Rain corrected smoothly. Toward a legal union that must be completed before dawn. Him. Father Aldrich pocketed the coin. Come in, then. Let's make it official. They entered the chapel, and the heavy door closed behind them with a sound like fate sealing itself shut. The interior of St. Moraine's chapel smelled of ancient incense and candle wax, layers upon layers of prayer and ritual absorbed into stone over centuries. Candles flickered on the altar, casting dancing shadows across walls adorned with faded religious murals. The space was small, intimate in a way that made the ceremony feel more real than Lionel had anticipated. Father Aldrich shuffled toward the altar, straightening his robes and producing a leather-bound book from beneath a cloth. "Names?" he asked, his voice carrying the slight slur of someone who'd been enjoying the sacramental wine a bit too liberally. "Lionel Marie Thornwick," she said, her voice barely above a whisper in the sacred space. The priest's pen scratched across parchment. Then he looked at Rain expectantly. "Rain Stormclaw." Lionel's head snapped toward him. Stormclaw. The name resonated with something she couldn't quite place, familiar in a way that teased at the edges of her memory. But Father Aldrich showed no reaction, simply recording the name with the same disinterest he'd shown for hers. "Very well." The priest positioned them before the altar. "Stand here." Facing each other. Lionel turned to face Rain, and the full weight of what she was doing crashed over her. She was marrying a complete stranger. A man whose last name she'd learned 30 seconds ago. A man who made her instincts scream warnings and promises in equal measure. His gold eyes met hers, steady and calm, as if he performed midnight marriages in dusty chapels regularly. Perhaps he did. What did she really know about him? Nothing. She knew nothing, and yet she was binding herself to him legally. "Hands," Father Aldrich instructed. Rain extended his hands, palms up. Lionel placed hers in his, and that electric sensation returned, softer this time, but unmistakable. A current that ran between them, warm and insistent. His fingers closed around hers, gentle but secure. Father Aldrich began reading from the traditional text, his words slurring slightly but still carrying the weight of ritual. "Marriage is a bond formed before the goddess and witnessed by the mortal realm. It is not to be entered lightly, but with full knowledge and consent." Lionel barely heard the words. Her entire awareness had narrowed to the man standing before her, to the warmth of his hands holding hers, to the way his eyes never left her face. There was something in his gaze, intensity, yes, but also tenderness. As if this stranger somehow understood exactly what this moment meant to her. "Do you, Rain Stormclaw, take this woman as your lawfully wedded wife? To honor and protect, from this day forward?" "I do." His voice was firm, clear, no hesitation whatsoever. The certainty in those two words did something strange to Lionel's chest, making it tighten with an emotion she couldn't name. "And do you, Lionel Marie Thornwick, take this man as your lawfully wedded husband? To honor and cherish, from this day forward?" This was it. Her last chance to turn back, to run, to find another way. But there was no other way. This was survival. This was freedom. "I do," she whispered. Father Aldrich nodded, satisfied. "The ring." Lionel blinked. She'd forgotten about rings entirely. Panic fluttered in her chest. But Rain was already reaching into his pocket, producing a simple silver band. It was plain, unadorned, but beautifully crafted. Where had he gotten it? When? He lifted her left hand, holding her gaze as he slid the ring onto her finger. The moment the metal touched her skin, that electric sensation blazed between them again, so powerful Lionel gasped. Her knees weakened, and Rain's grip on her hand tightened, steadying her. "The goddess recognizes your union," Father Aldrich intoned. "You may seal your vows with a kiss." Lionel's heart hammered. A kiss. She hadn't thought about this part. In her desperate planning, she'd imagined a quick exchange of vows, signatures on paper, nothing more. But Rain was already leaning down, his hand coming up to cup her face with surprising gentleness. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and his eyes asked a silent question. She gave the smallest nod. His lips met hers. The kiss was supposed to be perfunctory, meaningless. A requirement to complete the ceremony. But the moment their mouths touched, something ignited. Rain's lips were warm and firm, moving against hers with a slow deliberation that stole her breath. His hand cradled her face like she was precious, breakable, while his other hand remained at the small of her back, steadying her. Lionel's hands came up without conscious thought, gripping the front of his shirt as her legs threatened to give out entirely. The kiss deepened, and she could taste something wild on his lips, something that made her wolf whine and surge toward the surface. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. Rain's eyes had brightened to that impossible wolf amber again, and his pupils were dilated. Lina could feel her own wolf pressing against her skin, desperate and yearning in a way she'd never experienced. Well then, Father Aldrich said, clearing his throat with obvious amusement. Quite passionate for a business arrangement. Lina stepped back, her face burning. What was wrong with her? This was supposed to be simple, transactional. Not, whatever that had been. The marriage certificate, Rain said, his voice rougher than before. Father Aldrich produced an official document from his desk, unfurling it across the surface. Sign here. Both of you. Lina approached on shaky legs. The parchment was official, bearing the chapel's seal and space for witnesses. She took the offered quill and signed her full name in careful script, Lina Marie Thornwick. Rain signed next, his handwriting bold and confident. But he positioned his body so his hand partially obscured the signature, and when Lina tried to read it, she could only make out his first name clearly. The rest was hidden by his palm and the angle of his wrist. Then he produced something from inside his vest, a signet ring, heavy and ornate. He pressed it into red wax beside his signature, creating an official seal. The design was intricate, some kind of crest with wolves, but Father Aldrich was already dusting it with powder to set the wax, and Lina couldn't make out the details in the dim candlelight. Witnessed and sealed, the priest declared, adding his own signature. You are now legally wed in the eyes of the law and the goddess. Lina took the certificate with trembling hands, folding it carefully and tucking it inside her bodice where it would stay safe and hidden. This piece of parchment was her freedom, her shield against Corvus and her father's machinations. Outside the chapel, the night air felt shockingly cold after the warmth inside. Dawn was still hours away, but Lina could feel time pressing against her. She needed to return to the manor, to be there when Corvus arrived, to present this certificate and watch his plans crumble. Where will you go now? Rain asked, his voice quiet in the darkness. Back to Thornwick Manor. Lina looked up at him, this stranger who was now legally her husband. I'll present the certificate to my father and Lord Corvus. Prove that I'm already married and therefore unavailable. And if they don't accept it? If they try to have it annulled or claim it's fraudulent? The question sent ice through her veins. She hadn't considered that possibility thoroughly. Then I'll need you to appear. To confirm the marriage actually took place. I'll be there, Rain said simply. The certainty in his voice, the absolute conviction, made her believe him. Send word to the Copper Heart Tavern in the Market District. Ask for me by name. I'll come. The Copper Heart, she repeated, committing it to memory. And Lina. He caught her hand again, that electric sensation sparking between them. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that felt far more intimate than their kiss in the chapel. Be brave, little wolf. You're stronger than you know. Stronger than they've ever let you believe. Her throat tightened. Thank you. For this. For agreeing to help me. Don't thank me yet. His smile was mysterious, holding secrets she couldn't begin to guess. This night is far from over, and tomorrow will bring revelations neither of us can predict. Before she could ask what he meant, he released her hand and stepped back into the shadows. Go. Time is running short. I'll be watching to ensure you make it safely back to the manor walls. Lina wanted to ask how he'd watch from the market district when the manor was across the city. But something in his expression told her not to question, only to trust. So she gathered her skirts and began walking back toward Thornwick Manor, toward the confrontation that awaited, toward a future that had transformed completely in the span of a few desperate hours. The silver ring on her finger caught the moonlight as she walked, glinting like a promise. Behind her, she felt rather than heard Rain following at a distance, keeping his word, watching over her. And for the first time since learning of her forced betrothal to Corvus, Lina felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The walk back to Thornwick Manor felt both endless and too short. Lina moved through streets that were slowly beginning to stir with early risers, bakers starting their ovens, street sweepers beginning their rounds. The city was transforming from the dangerous nighttime world into something more familiar, but no less daunting for what awaited her at home. True to his word, Rain followed at a distance. She never saw him directly, but she felt his presence like a warm shadow, protective and constant. Several times, when rough-looking men appeared to notice her solitary state, they would glance past her and suddenly find urgent business elsewhere. She suspected rain had something to do with that. When she reached the outer wall of the manor, she paused, looking back one final time. The street behind her was empty, but she knew he was there somewhere in the shadows. "Thank you," she whispered to the dawn. A slight movement in an alley, a figure stepping back, acknowledging. Then nothing. Lionel climbed the crumbling section of wall, her muscles protesting after the night's exertions. Down the other side, through the rose garden where petals were just beginning to show color in the approaching dawn. Back through the stables, into the servants' tunnel, up through the darkness that now felt less terrifying than what lay ahead. She emerged into the manor just as the first rays of sunlight touched the eastern windows. Her mother was waiting in her chambers, pacing frantically. When Lionel entered, Elena spun around, her face transforming from terror to overwhelming relief. "Lionel." She rushed forward, pulling her daughter into a fierce embrace. "I thought, when you didn't return, I thought something terrible had happened." "Something wonderful happened." Lionel pulled back, reaching into her bodice for the marriage certificate. "Look." Elena's hands shook as she unfolded the document, her eyes scanning the official seals and signatures. Tears began streaming down her face as she read. "You did it. Saints above, you actually did it." "I'm married, Mama. Legally, officially married. Father's arrangement with Corvus is void." "Who?" Elena looked up, desperate for details. "Who agreed to this?" "A traveler. His name is Rain Stormclaw." Even saying his name sent a strange flutter through Lionel's chest. "He'll appear if needed to verify the marriage." Stormclaw. Elena's brow furrowed. That name, it sounds familiar somehow. Before Lionel could respond, voices echoed from the courtyard below, the sound of carriages arriving, of men's voices raised in greeting. Both women rushed to the window. Below, an ornate black carriage had pulled up to the entrance. Lord Corvus was descending, his skeletal frame draped in expensive dark clothing. Behind him, a man in official robes, the magistrate, no doubt, brought to witness the marriage contract. "He's early," Elena whispered. "It's barely dawn." Eager to claim his prize. Bitterness colored Lionel's words. "Let him come. I have something better than excuses. You need to change." Elena was already moving to the wardrobe, pulling out the cream and gold gown that had been set aside for the wedding. "If you're going to face them as a lady, not someone who's been scrambling through tunnels all night." Lionel stripped off her travel-stained clothes while her mother helped her into the formal gown. Her fingers fumbled with the clasps, trembling with exhaustion and anticipation. "Steady." Elena's hands covered hers, helping secure the final fastening. "Breathe, my darling. You've already done the hardest part. Now you simply need to stand firm." Lionel studied her reflection in the mirror. The young woman looking back appeared composed, regal even, in the elegant gown. But her eyes held a new quality, steel wrapped in determination. She was no longer the obedient daughter. She was a woman who'd seized control of her own destiny. The silver ring on her finger caught the morning light. "Whatever happens," Elena said softly, arranging Lionel's hair to hide the worst of the tangles, "I'm proud of you. So incredibly proud." A sharp knock at the door made them both jump. A servant's voice called through the wood, "Lady Lionel? Lord Thornwick requests your immediate presence in the drawing room. Lord Corvus has arrived." "Tell him I'll be down momentarily," Lionel called back, proud of how steady her voice sounded. She took one last look in the mirror, straightened her spine, and picked up the marriage certificate. Her shield. Her weapon. Her freedom. "Let's go end this," she said. The drawing room was already crowded when they entered. Her father, Henrik, stood by the fireplace looking exhausted and anxious, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. Lord Corvus dominated the space near the window, his tall, stooped frame casting long shadows across the expensive carpet. The magistrate stood beside him, a portly man clutching a leather case undoubtedly containing the marriage contract between Thornwick and Blackwater. All three men turned when Lionel and Elena entered. Finally, Corvus's thin lips curved in what might have been intended as a smile but looked more like a predator baring its teeth. "My bride graces us with her presence. How lovely you look, my dear. That gown suits you." His pale eyes traveled over her body with possessive satisfaction, and Lionel's skin crawled. The way he looked at her, as if she were already his property, his possession to examine and evaluate, it took all her strength not to visibly recoil. Lord Corvus. Henrik stepped forward, forcing cordiality into his tone. Magistrate Wells. Thank you for coming at such an early hour. Shall we proceed with? There will be no wedding, Lionel said clearly. Silence crashed through the room like a physical force. Henrik's face went white. Lionel, what? I said there will be no wedding. She stepped forward, producing the marriage certificate from the folds of her gown. I am already married. As of 3 hours ago, I am legally bound to another man. For a moment, no one moved. Then everything happened at once. What? Henrik's voice cracked. What have you done? Corvus lunged forward with surprising speed for a man his age, snatching the document from her hands. His face contorted with rage as he read. This is a forgery. A desperate fraud. My lord, if I may. Magistrate Wells took the certificate from Corvus's shaking hands, his professional demeanor slipping into place. He examined it carefully, holding it up to the light, checking the seals and signatures. The silence stretched taut as wire while he worked. Well? Corvus demanded. Tell them it's fake. I'm afraid I cannot. The magistrate's voice held reluctant certainty. The seal is genuine. Father Aldrich's signature is authentic. I know his hand well. The witnesses are properly recorded. This appears to be a legal marriage contract, executed according to proper ceremony. Henrik collapsed into the nearest chair as if his legs had given out. Lionel, how could you? How could I? Fire ignited in her chest. How could you? You sold me to this man like cattle to cover your gambling debts. I did what was necessary. You did what was convenient. Her voice rose, months of suppressed anger finally finding release. Don't pretend this was about family or duty. You needed Corvus's gold to pay off House Greymorn, and I was the currency you had available. You ungrateful little. Corvus crumpled the certificate in his fist, advancing on her with murder in his pale eyes. Do you have any idea what you've cost me? The plans I've made? The investments based on controlling those trade routes. I'm not currency, Lionel said, standing her ground even as he loomed over her. I'm not property to be traded. You're whatever I say you are. Corvus raised his hand, skeletal fingers curved into a claw aimed at her face. You worthless little whore. The blow descended. And stopped. A hand had caught Corvus's wrist mid-strike, stopping it completely with effortless strength. A voice, familiar and deep, cut through the room like a blade. You will not touch her. Lionel spun around, her heart stopping. Rain stood in the doorway of the drawing room, but he was transformed. Gone was the humble traveler in worn clothes. He stood like a king, shoulders back, chin raised, radiating an authority that seemed to fill every corner of the space. His gold eyes blazed with something terrifying, something that made every wolf in the room instinctively drop their gaze and bare their necks in submission. Even Lionel felt the urge to submit, though beneath it ran a stronger current, safe. Protected. Mine. Who the hell? Corvus started. Then Rain released his wrist and pulled down his collar, revealing the mark burned into his skin just above his heart. The Stormclaw sigil. Henrik made a strangled sound and fell to his knees. Magistrate Wells dropped his leather case, bowing so deeply his forehead nearly touched the floor. Only Corvus remained standing, though his face had gone chalk white. I am Rain Stormclaw, the stranger who was not a stranger said, his voice carrying absolute authority. Alpha King of Thornhaven. And this woman is my wife. The world tilted sideways. Alpha King. The words echoed in Lionel's mind, refusing to make sense. The stranger she'd hired in a desperate midnight market, the man she'd paid with her mother's jewels to marry her for a single night, he was the Alpha King. The most powerful wolf in 3 territories. The ruler whose word was absolute law, whose authority stretched from the northern mountains to the southern coast. Impossible. But the evidence stood before her. The Stormclaw sigil burned into his flesh, a mark that couldn't be forged, that appeared only on those of the royal bloodline. The way Henrik and Magistrate Wells had immediately prostrated themselves. The absolute authority radiating from Rain like heat from a forge. You. Lionel's voice came out as barely a whisper. You're. She couldn't finish the sentence. Her legs threatened to give out, and she locked her knees to keep from collapsing. Rain's gold eyes found hers, and something in them softened despite the fury still directed at Corvus. I apologize for the deception. I wanted to meet my mate as a man, not a crown. Mate. He'd said it again. The word struck her like lightning. The electric sensation when they touched. Her wolf's inexplicable reaction to him. The way the marriage ceremony had felt like so much more than a business transaction. The mate bond. It had been real. Your Majesty. Magistrate Wells remained bowed, his voice shaking. We had no idea, Lord Thornwick never mentioned. Lord Thornwick had no idea either, Rain said coldly, his attention shifting from Lionel to her father, who remained on his knees, face ashen. Did you, Henrik? And no, Your Majesty. I swear, I had no knowledge. Of course you didn't. Rain's tone could have frozen fire. Too busy gambling away your family fortune and selling your daughter to murderers to pay attention to your sovereign traveling through his own kingdom. He turned to Corvus, who had backed against the wall, all his earlier bluster evaporated. Lord Corvus Blackwater. I've been investigating you for 6 months. Rain produced a scroll from inside his vest, when had that appeared, and unfurled it. The royal seal glinted in the morning light. Charges, Rain read, his voice carrying the weight of judgment. Murder of Ladies Helena, Maris, and Senna Blackwater, your 3 previous wives. Trafficking in wolfsbane poison across pack borders, a substance banned for its use in poisoning rival wolves. Conspiracy to destabilize trade routes for personal profit, including bribing officials and arranging accidents for competing merchants. You have no proof. Corvus's voice cracked. These are lies spread by my enemies. I have 3 witnesses who survived your wolfsbane operations. They are currently under royal protection, ready to testify. Rain's eyes blazed. I have your own ledgers, seized from your northern estate 2 days ago by my investigators. Detailed accounts of every illegal transaction, every bribe, every shipment of poison. Corvus's face went from white to grey. And I have testimony from the healers who examined your wives' bodies. Rain continued relentlessly. All 3 showed traces of the same slow-acting poison. Wolfsbane administered in small doses over months, causing symptoms that mimicked natural illness. The marriage was to give you access to Thornwick's trade routes, Rain said. Routes you couldn't control through legitimate means. Routes that would have allowed you to expand your poison trafficking into territories currently closed to you. The room was utterly silent except for Corvus's ragged breathing. Rain raised his voice, addressing someone beyond the door. Guards. 4 royal guards entered, wearing the distinctive silver and black of the Thornhaven elite. They moved with military precision, surrounding Corvus. No. Corvus lunged toward the door, but the guards caught him easily. Henrik promised her to me. The contract, we had an agreement. The contract is void, Rain said, his voice colder than winter. She belongs to no one but herself. And she has chosen me, which makes her my wife and my queen. Your claim on her died the moment our marriage was sealed. As the guards dragged Corvus toward the door, he twisted around, his face contorted with hatred. You'll regret this. All of you. The northern houses will revolt when they hear. The northern houses will celebrate when they learn their monster has been caged, Rain interrupted. Take him. The dungeons at Thornhaven Palace will hold him until trial. Corvus's screams echoed down the corridor as he was removed, gradually fading into silence. The drawing room felt larger without his presence, yet somehow the weight in the air remained. Rain turned to Henrik, who still knelt on the floor, trembling. Stand. Henrik struggled to his feet, unable to meet the Alpha King's eyes. You sold your daughter to a murderer to cover gambling debts. Each word was a condemnation. You knew his reputation, 3 dead wives, rumors of cruelty, suspected criminal activities. Yet you gave Lionel to him anyway. The debts, I had no choice, House Greymorn would have destroyed us. You had a choice. Rain's voice cut through the excuses like a blade. You chose gold over your child's life. You chose your own survival over her future. You taught her she was only valuable as property to be traded. Lionel found her voice, though it shook. You made me believe I was nothing more than a bargaining chip. That my worth began and ended with what alliance my marriage could bring. Henrik reached toward her, desperation in his eyes. Lina, please, you have to understand. I understand perfectly. She stepped back, closer to Rain, drawing strength from his presence. I understand that you never saw me as your daughter. Only as an asset. A thing to be sold when convenient. That's not true. Isn't it? Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Did you ever ask what I wanted? Did you ever consider my feelings, my fears? Or was I always just a means to an end? Henrik's silence was answer enough. Rain placed a hand on Lina's shoulder, the touch gentle but grounding. His punishment is yours to decide. As the wronged party and as my queen, you have that right. Exile, imprisonment, or pardon, the choice is yours. The room held its breath. Lina looked at her father, this man who'd raised her, who'd taught her to read, who'd once carried her on his shoulders through the manor gardens. Before the gambling. Before the debts. Before he'd stopped seeing her as a person. Part of her wanted vengeance. Wanted him to suffer as she'd suffered, to feel the fear and helplessness he'd inflicted on her. But another part, the part that Rain had called strong, understood that revenge would change nothing. It wouldn't undo the past or heal the wounds. It would only create more pain. Exile, she said finally. From Thornwick lands and all territories under Thornhaven rule. Let him live with his choices somewhere else, but not here. Not where I have to see the face of the man who valued me so little. Henrik's expression crumpled. Lina. That is my decision. She lifted her chin. And it's final. Rain nodded approval. It will be done. You have 3 days to settle your affairs and leave, Henrik Thornwick. If you're found within our borders after that, imprisonment awaits. Magistrate Wells, still bowing awkwardly, cleared his throat. And the Thornwick estate, your majesty, will be transferred to Lady Elena Thornwick, Rain said. She'll have full control of the lands, trade routes, and assets. Henrik may take only his personal effects and enough gold for travel. Elena, who'd been silent throughout the confrontation, made a small sound of shock. The estate should remain with someone who understands its value extends beyond gold, Rain continued. Someone who loves its people, not just its profits. Your Majesty, Elena's voice broke. Thank you. Rain turned back to Lina, and his expression transformed. Gone was the cold judgment, replaced by something warmer, more intimate. We need to talk. Privately. Lina nodded, still reeling from everything that had happened in the last few minutes. Her hired husband was the Alpha King. They were fated mates. Corvus was arrested. Her father was exiled. Her mother now controlled the estate. Her entire world had been turned upside down before breakfast. The gardens, Rain said quietly, offering his hand. We can speak there. Lina placed her hand in his, that familiar electric warmth sparking between them. Mate bond. Real and undeniable. As they walked toward the door, passing Henrik, her father reached out. Lina, please. She didn't stop walking. Didn't look back. Some wounds went too deep for words to heal. The morning sun felt too bright after the darkness of the drawing room confrontation. Lina walked beside Rain through the manor gardens, her mind spinning with revelations that refused to settle into coherent thought. You're the Alpha King, she said, needing to hear the words aloud, to make them real. The Alpha King. Ruler of Thornhaven. I am. Rain led her to a stone bench beneath a flowering arbor, away from the manor windows and any listening ears. Why didn't you tell me? The question came out sharper than intended, edged with betrayal. Why let me think you were just a traveler? Why accept my jewels and my desperate bargain when you could buy kingdoms? He was quiet for a moment, his gold eyes studying the roses climbing the arbor. I've been traveling in disguise for 3 months. Escaping the suffocating weight of court, the endless politics, the nobles pushing their daughters at me like prizes to be won. Most people would envy that position. Most people don't understand the isolation. He turned to her, and she saw weariness in his expression beneath the authority. Every conversation calculated, every gesture analyzed, every word weighed for hidden meaning. I am never just a man. Always a crown, a title, a tool for advancement. Lina thought of her own experience. Never just a daughter, always a bargaining chip. Perhaps they had more in common than she'd realized. 3 months ago, I had a prophetic dream, Rain continued. The goddess sometimes gifts our bloodline with visions. I saw a woman with dark hair and desperate eyes, choosing courage over safety. Standing in a night market, searching for hope in darkness. You saw me. Wonder colored her voice. Before we met. I saw my mate. I just didn't know when or where I'd find her. His hand reached out, fingers brushing the silver ring he'd placed on her hand hours ago. So I left the palace in disguise, traveling my kingdom, searching. Hoping fate would lead me to you. And when you saw me in the market, I knew instantly. The mate bond confirmed what the vision had shown me. His thumb traced circles on her palm, sending shivers up her arm. You were there, offering everything you owned to a stranger, willing to risk anything for freedom. And I realized, this was my chance to meet my mate as a man, not a king. To be chosen for who I am, not what I represent. Lina pulled her hand back, needing distance to think clearly. You let me believe I was hiring you. That this was a business transaction. A temporary arrangement. I know. Guilt shadowed his features. And I apologize for the deception. But I needed to know, would you choose me if there was nothing to gain? Would you see past the desperation to the person underneath? That's not fair. Anger sparked in her chest. I was fighting for my life. You were playing games. No games. His voice turned fierce. I was fighting for something too. For genuine connection. For a mate who would know me before knowing my crown. He stood, pacing before the bench. Every woman brought before me at court sees only power and status. They don't want me, they want a throne, a title, advantages for their families. I wanted one person in this world who would choose me for myself. And you found that person by lying about who you were. I found that person by giving her the truth she needed in that moment. He stopped pacing, meeting her gaze directly. You needed a husband to escape Corvus. I became that husband. Everything else, the crown, the kingdom, those were complications that could wait until you were safe. Lina wanted to stay angry, but his logic was difficult to refute. If he'd revealed himself as Alpha King in the market, would she have believed him? Would she have trusted his intentions, or assumed he was mocking her, or playing some cruel game? The mate bond, she said, changing the subject. Explain it to me. Truly. Rain returned to the bench, sitting close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. It's a sacred connection between two souls, recognized by touch. Rare, perhaps 1 in 1,000 wolves find their fated mate. The bond is permanent, unbreakable, deeper than any marriage certificate or legal contract. What does it do? What does it mean? It means our souls recognize each other. That we're meant to be together, to complement and strengthen each other. His hand found hers again, and that electric sensation hummed between them. Can you feel it? The pull, the rightness, the sense of coming home. She could. Her wolf had been restless since meeting him, pacing and yearning in a way she'd never experienced. And every time they touched, that spark of recognition, of mine and yes and forever. It's overwhelming, she admitted quietly. It is. Especially when unexpected. His fingers laced through hers. The bond explains why your hands shook when I kissed you at the ceremony. Why your heart races when I'm near. Why your wolf calls to mine. But I didn't choose this. The words came out plaintive. I just needed to escape Corvus. I didn't ask for a mate bond. You chose me in that market, Rain said softly. Your wolf recognized mine before your mind understood. You could have approached any of the dozens of men there. But you came to me. Your soul knew, even if you didn't. Lina thought back to that moment, spotting him by the fire, the way something inside her had pulled toward him despite the warning signals, the certainty that he was the right choice even when logic said he was dangerous. Perhaps her wolf had known all along. What happens now? She asked. We're legally married, and apparently we're fated mates. What does that make us? Married by law. Connected by the bond. But not yet complete. Rain's thumb traced the pulse point on her wrist. There's a ritual, the claiming bite under the full moon. It seals the mate bond permanently, marks you as mine before the goddess and all wolves. It would make you my queen in truth, not just by marriage. And if I refuse? His expression turned somber. Then we remain married by law, but the bond will stay incomplete. It would be painful. For both of us. An ache that never fully heals, a yearning never satisfied. The bond pulls toward completion, and denying it goes against our very nature. So I don't really have a choice. You always have a choice. His grip on her hand tightened gently. The bond might make refusing harder, but it doesn't eliminate your agency. If you truly don't want this, don't want me, I'll find a way to make it bearable. I won't force you into something you don't choose freely. Lioness studied his face, searching for deception or manipulation. But she found only sincerity, and beneath it, a vulnerability that surprised her. The powerful Alpha King, admitting he would endure permanent pain rather than force her hand. If I complete the bond, I become queen. Queen of Thornhaven. Yes. You'd rule beside me. Your voice would carry the weight of the crown. Your decisions would shape policy. You wouldn't be decoration or a silent partner, you'd be my equal in governance. I don't know how to be a queen. Fear crept into her voice. I'm just a merchant lord's daughter. I've been taught to be obedient, decorative, useful for alliances. Not how to lead. You bargained with a stranger in darkness to save yourself, Rain countered. You faced Corvus without flinching when he tried to strike you. You chose justice over vengeance with your father. You're already a queen, Lioness. You just didn't know it. His words echoed something deep inside her, a potential she'd never been allowed to explore, strength she'd never been permitted to show. The full moon is tonight, Rain said quietly. I'll wait in these gardens at midnight. If you come, I'll complete the bond. If you don't. He paused, and pain flickered across his features. If you don't, I'll understand. Your choice, always your choice. He stood, releasing her hand, and the absence of his touch felt like sudden cold. Wait. Lioness rose as well. You're leaving. You need time to think. To process everything that's happened. He stepped back, though his eyes never left hers. This is the most important decision of your life. Make it without me standing over you, without the bond pulling at you. Decide what you want, not what I want or what the bond wants. What if I have questions? Then send for me. I'll be at the Copper Heart, as promised. A slight smile touched his lips. I keep my word, little wolf. Always. He turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Whatever you decide, whether you choose me or choose freedom, I want you to know something. What? Meeting you was worth every risk. Every deception. Every consequence. His gold eyes blazed with intensity. You're worth more than any crown, any kingdom. Never let anyone make you believe otherwise. Then he was gone, striding through the gardens toward the outer gate, leaving Lioness alone with the most impossible choice of her life. Queen or not. Bound or free. Mate or stranger. The morning sun climbed higher, and she had until midnight to decide her future. The gardens waited in silver silence. Lioness stood before her mirror one final time, studying the woman reflected back. Gone was the desperate girl who'd fled through tunnels just days ago. In her place stood someone new, someone who'd learned that true strength meant choosing vulnerability, that real power came from accepting love rather than running from it. The simple white dress she'd chosen felt appropriate. No jewels, no elaborate styling. Tonight wasn't about appearances. It was about a choice made freely, without pretense or obligation. Her fingers traced the silver ring Rain had placed on her hand during their midnight ceremony. Such a small thing to carry such enormous weight. She'd thought it represented escape, a legal shield against Corvus. Now she understood it meant something far deeper. The full moon hung enormous beyond her window, bathing Thornwick Manor in ethereal light. Somewhere below, Rain waited. Giving her space. Respecting her need to arrive at this decision alone, without his presence influencing her. That patience, that respect, it told her everything she needed to know. Elena knocked softly, entering with tears already glistening. You're going to him. I am. Lioness turned from the mirror, took her mother's hands. Not because I must. Because I want to. He's given you what your father never did, genuine choice. Elena's voice broke slightly. The freedom to walk away if that's what your heart requires. My heart requires him. The admission felt like breathing after holding her breath too long. My wolf has been howling for him since the moment our eyes met. I just needed time to understand that destiny and desire can be the same thing. Then go to him, my darling. Elena kissed her forehead. Go claim your fate. Lionel descended through corridors that felt different now, no longer a prison but simply a place she was leaving behind. The manor held memories, some bitter, some sweet, but none powerful enough to anchor her here. The garden entrance stood open, moonlight spilling across the threshold like an invitation. She stepped through. Rain stood beside the fountain, its water catching lunar light and scattering it like liquid diamonds. He changed into formal attire, fitted black jacket embroidered with silver thread, the stormclaw crest prominent on his chest. The moonlight transformed him into something between man and myth. Ancient and eternal. When he saw her, his entire body tensed. Relief, desire, and something fierce and possessive flooded his expression. You came. His voice carried rough edges, as if he genuinely feared she wouldn't. Did you doubt I would? She crossed the remaining distance between them, each step deliberate. Every second. Honest vulnerability softened his features. I've conquered territories, negotiated treaties that shaped kingdoms, faced enemies without flinching. But waiting for you tonight? That terrified me. The admission from the Alpha King, from the most powerful wolf in 3 territories, made her heart clench. I choose this, Lionel said clearly. I choose you. Not from desperation or obligation or because some cosmic force decided we're compatible. I choose you because in 4 impossible days, you've shown me what it means to be valued as myself, not as property or alliance or convenience. Rain's eyes blazed gold, then shifted to wolf amber. You have no idea what those words mean to me. Then show me. She offered her hand. Complete what we started in that chapel. Make this bond real in every way that matters. He took her hand, that familiar electric warmth sparking between them. But this time, instead of confusion or hesitation, Lionel leaned into the sensation. Let it wash through her, welcomed it. Then Rain did something that stole her breath entirely. The Alpha King, ruler of Thornhaven, sovereign of 3 territories, the most dominant wolf alive, knelt before her. What are you doing? She whispered. Honoring you. He looked up, moonlight catching in his gold eyes. I kneel before no one, Lionel. Only you. Only my mate, my equal, my queen. Tears burned hot behind her eyes. I, Rain Stormclaw, Alpha King of Thornhaven, claim you, Lionel Thornwick, as my mate. His voice rang clear and strong, carrying ancient ritual weight. As my queen. As my equal before the goddess and all wolves. I pledge my strength to protect you, my wisdom to guide you, my heart to love you, from this moment until my last breath. The words settled into her bones, into her soul, transforming something fundamental. I, Lionel Thornwick, accept your claim. Her voice matched his in strength. I choose you as my mate, my king, my equal. I pledge my courage to stand beside you, my voice to challenge you when needed, my heart to love you completely. Rain rose in one fluid motion, pulling her close. His hand cupped her face with devastating gentleness. This will hurt for a moment. The claiming mark. I know. She tilted her head, exposing the curve of her neck and shoulder. I'm ready. His lips pressed against her skin first, a reverent kiss that made her shiver. Then his breath warmed the spot just below her ear. Mine, he whispered. Yours, she confirmed. When his teeth pierced her skin, the world exploded. The mate bond, which had been humming quietly between them, suddenly blazed into full existence. Power flooded through every nerve, every cell. Lionel gasped as she felt Rain's wolf surge forward to meet hers, 2 souls recognizing, intertwining, becoming permanently linked. She could feel his emotions now, fierce protectiveness, overwhelming love, bone-deep satisfaction at finally completing their bond. His wolf's voice echoed in her mind, primal and possessive, mate. Ours. Forever. Her own wolf responded with equal fervor, yes. Home. Complete. The claiming mark appeared where his teeth had broken skin, silver and black ink spreading across her shoulder in an intricate design. The Stormclaw sigil, but transformed, interwoven with something uniquely hers. A rose with thorns wrapping around the wolf crest, beautiful and dangerous in equal measure. Rain pulled back, and his eyes had gone full wolf. Mine, he growled again, the word vibrating with alpha dominance. But Lionel felt no urge to submit. Instead, she grabbed his jacket and pulled him down to her. Ours, she corrected against his mouth. We belong to each other. Then she kissed him with everything she had, weeks of fear transformed into fierce joy, desperation reborn as desire, loneliness shattered by connection so profound it made her previous life feel like a half-remembered dream. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Rain pressed his forehead to hers. My queen. My fierce, brave, impossible queen. Your equal, she reminded him, unable to suppress her smile. Always. He kissed her again, softer this time. We rule together or not at all. The moon witnessed their completion, bathing them in silver benediction as they stood wrapped in each other, the mate bond singing between them like music only they could hear. Tomorrow would bring challenges, a court to navigate, policies to shape, a kingdom to protect. But tonight, beneath the full moon's blessing, Lionel Thornwick became Lionel Stormclaw. Not because she was forced. Not because she had no other choice. Because she chose love over fear. Chose partnership over solitude. Chose to believe that the desperate bargain in a dark market had been fate all along, leading her exactly where she was always meant to be. In the arms of her mate. Her king. Her equal. Home. 3 months later. The throne room of Thornhaven Palace could have swallowed Thornwick Manor whole. Massive columns of white stone rose to a vaulted ceiling painted with constellations and ancient wolf legends. Representatives from every pack in 3 territories filled the space, hundreds of wolves dressed in formal attire, all gathered to witness history. Lionel stood at the room's center, heart steady despite the weight of the moment. The past 3 months had transformed her in ways that went beyond the claiming mark on her shoulder. Rain had been true to his word, treating her as a genuine equal. Every council meeting, every policy decision, every diplomatic negotiation, he'd insisted on her presence, her input, her perspective. You see things I miss, he told her after she'd suggested reforms to marriage laws that would protect women like her mother. Your experiences matter. Your voice matters. Don't ever doubt that. She'd learned to navigate court politics, identifying allies and threats with increasing skill. She'd discovered a talent for diplomacy, finding common ground between feuding packs. She'd studied governance, law, economics, filling gaps in her education with voracious determination. And through it all, the mate bond had deepened. What began as electric attraction had grown into profound partnership. They balanced each other, his strategic patience complementing her instinctive boldness, her emotional intelligence enhancing his tactical brilliance. Now, wearing coronation robes of deep blue velvet embroidered with silver wolves, she prepared for the final step. Archbishop Brennan approached, carrying the Queen's crown on a velvet cushion. The crown itself was a masterwork, white gold forged into delicate wolves running in an eternal circle, their eyes set with sapphires that matched her robes. Rain stood beside his throne, watching with undisguised pride and love. The Archbishop's voice carried through the vast chamber. Lionel Stormclaw, do you swear before the goddess and these witnesses to protect the wolf packs? To uphold justice for all, regardless of rank or status. To rule with both wisdom and strength. This was it. The moment that would make her transformation complete. I swear. Her voice rang clear and strong. I will protect those who cannot protect themselves. I will ensure justice reaches even the powerless. I will rule with both compassion and resolve. The crown settled onto her head, cool metal warming against her skin. Its weight felt right, not a burden but a responsibility she'd earned through fire and choice. All hail Queen Lionel Stormclaw, the Archbishop proclaimed. As one, hundreds of wolves dropped to their knees. Queen Lionel. The sound reverberated through the chamber, through her chest, through her very soul. She'd come so far from that desperate girl offering jewels to a stranger. From the woman who'd believed her only value lay in who she could be traded to. Rain stepped forward, offering his hand. When she took it, the mate bond hummed with satisfaction. Shall we greet our people, my queen? His eyes held stars. Together, my king. She squeezed his fingers. Always together. They descended from the dais side by side, equals in every way that mattered. Later, when the formal celebrations had ended and they'd retreated to their private chambers, Lionel stood at the window overlooking Thornhaven's sprawling capital. Thousands of lights twinkled below, each one a home, a life she now held responsibility for. The crown sat on a nearby table, temporarily removed. The coronation robes had been traded for comfortable silk. Warm arms wrapped around her waist from behind. Rain's chin rested on her shoulder, his breath warm against her neck. "Regrets," he murmured. She thought of everything. The terror of that night in her chambers, knowing Corvus would claim her by dawn. The desperate gamble in the night market. The surreal midnight marriage. The shocking revelation of Rain's true identity. The choice beneath the full moon. Today's coronation. "I thought I was buying a husband for one night." She leaned back against his chest. "Instead, I found my mate, my partner, and myself. I thought I was accepting a business transaction." He pressed a kiss below her ear, right where the claiming mark resided. "Instead, I found my queen." Lionel turned in his arms, meeting those gold eyes that had first caught her attention across firelight. "I needed a husband by tomorrow. I never imagined tomorrow would make me a queen." "You were always a queen." Rain's fingers traced her jaw. "You just needed circumstances that let you remember it." She pulled him down for a kiss that held everything: gratitude, passion, partnership, and profound love that grew stronger with each passing day. The mate bond sang between them, perfect and complete. Outside, Thornhaven slept under the same moon that had witnessed their claiming. Inside, the Alpha King and his queen held each other, two souls who'd found their match in the most impossible of circumstances. A desperate bargain in darkness had become the greatest love story their kingdom would ever know. And it was only beginning. Thank you for joining me on this journey through moonlit gardens, dangerous markets, and throne rooms where queens are crowned not by birthright but by choice and courage. Until the next story calls us into its embrace, remember, you are never just one thing, never only what others decide you're worth, and always deserving of a love that sees you completely. Subscribe, comment, share, and keep believing in stories that remind us why the heart risks everything for connection.